Good afternoon. It's 3 o'clock on Thursday, the 23rd of February, and I'm Daniel Tyson with your latest news headlines from Solent Journalism. Most supermarkets are limiting purchases of some fruits and vegetables due to temporary shortages. For the following few weeks, customers will not be allowed to buy more than 3 items of some green grocery products. Extreme weather has resulted in poor harvest for farmers in Europe and North Africa, where UK usually imports from during this time of year. Some farmers have also been forced to cut back on their use of greenhouses due to rising energy bills. Our reporter Charles Rhodes has looked at how Southampton has been affected.
With a reported lack of fruits and veg in supermarkets all across the country in the last week, we went out into Southampton to a few supermarkets to see if we could find any for ourselves. We spoke to members of the public to see what their thoughts were on the shortage and how it's affected them in the last few days.
As a country, we can live without tomatoes, cucumber and lettuce for a few weeks, can't we?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
All I hope is when it does come back on the market, they don't charge an horrendous price for it, because you can bet me they will.
Yeah. I haven't been shopping this week, but no problems last week. The weather sounds like it's been bad, but no, I've not looked at it independently.
We've just been into Lidl's and finally managed to get some eggs today. There's lots of empty shelves. Our own growers aren't able to heat the greenhouses, so we've got no tomatoes, and so it goes on and on.
After speaking to members of the public and conducting our own investigation, it's clear that there is a shortage. However, we found that it's not impossible to find your favourite fruits and veg in supermarkets around the city centre. Charles Rhodes, Solent Journalism.
In other news, many shops, homes and businesses in Southampton city centre were left without power for more than 3 hours today. An unplanned power cut has affected most of the above Bar Street and Bargate. In the last hour, it looks like power is back. Brett Gardner has more on the story.
Southampton City experienced a power outage around 11 a.m. Shops including TK Maxx, WH Smith, River Island and Urban Outfitters were among those closed due to the power cut. Some exceptions included the likes of Primark and Card Factory, which appeared to be operating as usual. Power companies Scottish and Southern Electric have been working on a solution to bring power back to the affected areas.
Concerns have been raised regarding the financial situation of Southampton City Council. As we've reported earlier, council tax is going to rise in Southampton by 2.99% from April. But in an interview with Solent Journalism, Steve Leggett, the Cabinet Member for Finance and Change, has revealed how much of an impact inflation had on this year's budget.
We've seen a lot of impact. Energy prices are rocketing. The council spends will spend next year about 24 million on energy, and that's doubled in 3 years. So if you go back in time, the energy bill was somewhere in the region of about 5 million, so you can see the massive increases. Inflation, so our budget is set in February, and all the assumptions about inflation and interest rates and pay awards actually were wildly inaccurate because of the spike in inflation. And of course, in September last year, we had the mini budget from Kwasi Kwarteng, and that really severely impacted us because of our borrowing, and interest rates rocketed. So we see lots of inflationary pressures in our supply chain, energy prices, and also in demand.
Despite reported financial difficulties, the city didn't stop donations to a good cause. Over the past month, Southampton has raised £65,000 to help victims of the Turkey and Syria earthquake. The Rays of Hope charity collected £20,000 from local mosques and the rest from the wider community. And in other financial news, delays to repairs to a stretch of the M27 motorway outside Southampton mean the cost of the project has now risen by £30 million. The resurfacing work, designed to reduce traffic noise, was supposed to happen in the spring, but has been extended to the autumn. Tomorrow at 11 a.m, the nation will pause in silence for 1 minute to remember those affected by the war in Ukraine, 1 year since the Russian invasion. In Southampton, there'll also be a vigil in East Park at 7 p.m. On the eve of the anniversary, our reporter Ned Kelly has been looking at how the war has been developing and what might happen next.
It is 1 year since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The war has so far claimed thousands of lives and has forced many to flee their country. As you can see, these images show how Russia have currently annexed 4 regions along the east and south of Ukraine. Interestingly, depicted by these blue areas, Russia did initially gain control of Kherson, but due to counteroffensives by the Ukrainian army, Russia was compelled to retreat backwards. According to the United Nations Human Rights Committee, more than 8,000 civilians have been killed and at least 30,000 have been injured over the last 12 months. The war has also led to 14 million Ukrainians having to leave their homes. Earlier this month, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak welcomed Volodymyr Zelensky to the UK, where he presented a pilot's helmet as a symbol to request fighter jets for Ukraine. Aircraft has been viewed as the next step to defend territory and to develop more effective counter-offensives.
I trust this symbol will help us for our next coalition of the planes, and I appeal to you and the world with simple and yet most important words. Combat aircrafts for Ukraine, wings for freedom.
Over the last year, the UK has supported Ukraine's war effort with £2.3 billion of funding overall, providing military training and weapons, the introduction of the resettlement scheme, Homes for Ukraine, and financial sanctions on Russian oligarchies. This week, Russia's President Vladimir Putin addressed the nation's parliament and stated that Russia will be suspending its participation in the New START treaty. The agreement was originally signed in partnership with the United States in 2010. The agreement creates limit checks on the number of nuclear weapons both countries can have. Speaking for nearly 2 hours, Putin also placed blame on the Western world for the difficulties that have been raised in the invasion.
Хочу особо подчеркнуть, что еще до начала специальной военной операции велись переговоры Киева с Западом о поставках на Украину и систем ПВО, и боевых самолетов, и другой тяжелой техники. Помним мы и о потугах киевского режима заполучить ядерное оружие. Ведь говорили об этом публично. США и НАТО ускоренно разворачивали у границ нашей страны свои армейские базы. Я хочу это повторить. Это они развязали войну. А мы использовали силу и используем, чтобы ее остановить.
Here in Southampton, many organisations and key partners have banded together to support Ukrainian people with day-to-day supplies. Last year, in the midst of Russia's army mobilisation, we, Solent Journalism, visited a local Polish social club which collected and delivered supplies to the borders of Ukraine. Because of their amazing effort, more than £28,000 was raised, which enabled the club to organise and send 61 vans and 23 lorries of resources to the people of Ukraine. And finally, what will happen next? Well, there has been contrasting assessments on Russia's capability to orchestrate a brand new offensive. However, since before Christmas, Ukrainian officials have been warning allies of a new military attack, but evidence for a large-scale manoeuvre remains light. In terms of Ukrainian counter-offensives, officials have voiced ambition to retake territory, particularly the Russian-occupied region of Crimea.
Anti-racism campaigner Troy Townsend was at Solent University yesterday talking to sports and journalism students. He's an ambassador for the Kick It Out campaign that fights racism in football. According to him, abuse at the amateur level of the game is something that really needs to be tackled.
Last night, like I said, a manager in non-league was racially abused. His wife was abused with some language that I can't repeat. And yet the game wasn't stopped to protect him in the dugout and his wife over the other side of the dugout, who had their 5- and 7-year-old young girls in there, asking mummy why those people are calling her a really, really nasty word. I said that every time I speak up and speak out, I question whether I still have a job. So every time I criticise and say the Premier League have got to do better, the FA have got to do better, you know, whatever, the Super League has got to do, I get criticised. And I feel that, right, I'm strong enough in my own convictions and beliefs that I understand what has happened and I want to talk on behalf of those people. So I put my job at risk. If it was on the street, it would be a hate crime. It would be a hate crime. People will go to court. It's on a green pitch. It's acceptable. How?
That was anti-racist campaigner Troy Townsend, and you can see more of what he said on our website. Staying with sports, Southampton caretaker manager Ruben Salish takes charge of his second match this weekend, a vital game against Leeds United. A win for Saints could lift them out of the Premier League relegation zone. And that's all from us for now. You can find all our stories and more online. Head to our website solentjournalism.co.uk, and you can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter. We're back with our radio bulletins tomorrow. Have a good evening.